Jeremy Boissino is the co-founder of Favikon, a company that you may know for their creator rankings. But behind the rankings, Favikon is a marketplace that connects brands and creators for mutually beneficial outcomes. In this episode, we dive into Jeremy's unique LinkedIn strategy that's grown him to 45,000 followers, his hypothesis behind why hundreds of LinkedIn top voices lost their badges over Christmas, and finally, why he believes the future of marketing is employee-generated content. Let's get into it. Welcome to Connection Accepted. Today, we've got a really special guest on. We've got Jeremy Boissino, the co-founder of Favikon. Jeremy, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, and great job on the pronunciation.
Appreciate it. I try my best. Jeremy, for people who don't know who you are, can you just give a quick intro on where you're from and what you're working on?
Sure. Thanks for having me again. My name is Jeremy. I'm based in France. I run a company called Favikon, which is essentially a AI-powered influencer marketing platform. We are commonly referred to as the Forbes for the creator economy because we have these like real-time rankings which give clear insights on who's influential on which platform in which industry, etc. Been in the creator economy for almost a decade now, so kind of like a dinosaur. I've seen the evolution of the market, and I'm upside as ever to be in this industry, which in my opinion is crazy interesting.
Before you started Favikon, what were you doing, and were you also in a similar space?
Actually, not at all. Both of my parents, they're like in the public service, and their dream was for me to become a teacher. And I studied economics and public affairs at Sciences Po in Paris. And that was kind of like the naturally the career I was supposed to have. And then I did my first internship at the French Ministry of Economics, and I was like, oh my god, I don't want to do this for my whole life. It was so boring. You felt like you had no impact whatsoever in this big administration, especially in France. And I did like a huge turnaround. I decided to do business school. um and then I quickly like fell into love with entrepreneurship because I've always been a very curious person, and I feel like when you're an entrepreneur, you do a bit of everything, and that's what I like to do. Like marketing, HR, sales, whatever. And then I started my first company actually in New York. We went to Techstars. Was completely different. It was a software, literally monitoring servers for engineers, so completely different industry. But that's kind of like how I got my hands dirty in the in the tech world. And after that, I got contacted by a friend of mine who acquired a company in France, which was called Eclipsia, and that was like 10 years ago. And this company was super interesting because it was like the first web TV ever. Essentially, was influencers on YouTube and Twitch streaming on like a 24/7 channel on Twitch, YouTube. And yeah, that's how I somehow ended up running this company. That's how I kind of like fell in love with social media and the career economy, because the career economy, is kind of like entrepreneurship. It's so diverse, so dynamic that you never get bored of it. And yeah, I did that for 2 years. Company was extremely successful until we realized that the business model of having, full-time employees for influencers was not a good business model, because essentially, as the influencer got successful, he would just leave. So basically, we were like literally, uh, you know, creating our own destruction by making people successful on social media. And that's how, after this experience, when I left, I had the idea of doing something more on the tech side, because it was essentially an agency before. I wanted to, fix an issue that for me has been, always around in the creator economy, is to tell who's actually a good influencer, why is he a good influencer, and to try to find, come up with the robust tech approach. And that's how Favikon got started.
That's an awesome story, Jeremy, and it sounds like you've been a pretty entrepreneurial person, having worked or founded multiple businesses at this point. Before we dive into Favicon, I think it's helpful to just help the audience understand what exactly the tool does. And you mentioned it's for influencer marketing, but for someone who maybe isn't as familiar with the creator economy and what Favicon does, can you just break it down in very simple, basic terms?
Sure. So it's a software, a SaaS subscription software, giving brands and agencies the ability, to find influencers, run their campaigns, have many sorts of features that are going to help you run influencer marketing. So whether it's working with influencers directly, or just do social listening on social media, we give you like all the tools to do this basically. And our core feature, which got us famous in the first place, like I said before, is those real-time rankings. Because for all the players in the creator economy, it's a great way to understand, what's going on LinkedIn or YouTube, Instagram, whatever. And yeah, we have customers all over the world. Our mission at Favikon has always been to create a software for everybody, just not just for the big shots or for the big players, but for everybody, whether you're a small startup, whether you're a big company, whether you're on your own, whether you're a creator. We really literally, address all the needs of the creator economy, because right now there's no, like de facto tool for anyone willing, to use this great marketing channel. So that's what we do.
Got it. That's really helpful. So, to break down what I'm hearing, if I'm a creator and I want to go be on Favicon's platform, the reason why I would go on there is maybe I want to work with brands and I want to have that profile with everything that I do and maybe my offerings in terms of sponsorship deals, etc. And then I know that there will be brands that come and reach out to me, or maybe I can reach out to them. Is that how it works?
So we have two sides of the software. We have one side for businesses, and we have one side for creators. So we do have a marketplace embedded in the software, but that's not all what it is. We actually source all influencers, all creators, millions of them, which obviously are not on the platform. So it gives you the ability, if you're a brand, to find anyone who's going to fit with what you're looking for. But you know that you're gonna, have like tens of thousands of creators who are already onboarding on the platform, and who are going to be more, actionable because they're already registered in the first place. But again, the whole idea of the platform is to give you freedom depending on what you're looking to do. And if you're a creator, there are essentially two missions, like two use cases as a creator. The first one would be, okay, you have your rankings, you have your stats, how can I improve as a creator? We give you insights, data, etc. And the second side would be to, like you said before, to find brands, to find the campaigns, to get, like a nice brand kit, to get contacted by brands through the rankings we highlight with your profile. So those are like all the use cases for a creator.
Jeremy, one thing that's been interesting for me to see in the creator economy this year, especially, is kind of the concept of niching down and not necessarily needing a million views. And I think LinkedIn started as a niche platform, social media of just getting jobs. And I think Favicon is one click lower than that, of getting jobs just for influencers. And you have an upgraded profile, whereas LinkedIn, you have some of your experience, but Favicon goes even deeper and is giving you rankings of how authentic you are and other rankings around your content to give that brand more structure on who you really are. Is that kind of a good sense of what Favicon does?
A whole premise is that, the creator economy right now is multidimensional, right? So 5 years ago, you were either on YouTube, Instagram, or TikTok. Now every creator has, like his global presence on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Substack, etc. It's very rare now to have a, like a one-dimensional creator who's only using one social media platform. And what we do with Favikon is that we give you a 360 overview of the creators. So Daniel, if you're active on Instagram or another platform, brands are going to be able to see it, because the idea again is to say, okay, how influential is this guy? what's his real presence on the internet. And that's why sometimes people refer to us also as the Wikipedia for the creator economy, because on Favikon, you're going to have like, deep insights on who's who on social media. So yeah, as a LinkedIn creator, sure, we're going to have, like the basics of your LinkedIn profile, but we're going to have much more than that because again, most people are then not just active in one place. And I think most creators now these days, they know how dangerous it can be to, have all your business just on one platform. You never know how the algorithm is going to evolve. You never know how the platform is going to react. They can ban you overnight or something. So yeah, I would say most creators now, they're active on 2 or 3 platforms.
Jeremy, what's the marketing strategy for Favicon? I know you're trying to appeal to two different groups of people, so is it the same approach or is there a slightly different approach?
So we have no sales in the team. We've always been 100% inbound, always been obsessed with building, like the brand, because I do think that in an AI slop world, it's super crucially important, to build a solid brand because now it's so easy to build a tech, a software, anyone can do it. So I do feel like the brand value is as important as ever, especially, as we're trying to become the reference in the creator economy. We need to get credibility, and that's the reason why we've been pushing so hard for those rankings, because in the end, those rankings bring us visibility, and in the long term, they also bring us customers. Most people who are going to share our rankings are creators, right? But, you know, if those people are like marketing industry or whatever, our ICP will follow those people. So essentially, we're doing like influencer marketing at scale with our own product, which means that every day we have like 100 mentions on LinkedIn, for instance, which are going to be creators advertising us, essentially. So that's kind of like our marketing strategy, like is to make people talk about us as much as possible. And then also on top of it, we have very intense SEO strategy where we're trying to build as much content as possible, as qualitative as possible. We do videos, we do like deep insights on influencer marketing campaigns, etc. We're really trying to be as insightful as possible with our SEO strategy. That's basically like the 2 angles we're having right now is the SEO on one side and the UGC/LinkedIn influencer marketing on the other side.
When you talk about building your personal brand, you have 45, almost 46,000 as of the recording of this podcast followers on LinkedIn. Does your co-founder also post, or are you the main face of the brand?
No, I wish. My co-founder is a CTO, and he just wants to code. He doesn't want to do any personal branding. Although it'd be great if he could post. It's easy to post yourself. It's harder, to urge people to do the same. So that's kind of like also another challenge we're having internally in trying to have our own employees post as much as possible. But as you know, posting on LinkedIn, there's still, a natural tendency to not want to do it because you're putting yourself out there with your family name, your real name in front of your colleagues, in front of your family, in front of your friends. Like I have a group of friends, and on a regular basis they make fun of my post, for instance, and they're like, "Ah, Jeremy, a nice post," and it's just making fun of me, but I don't care. I feel like there's still this tendency of people to make fun of LinkedIn content creation, although it's changing a little bit lately. And yeah, I do think now the future of the creator economy also is going to be more like employee advocacy. So driving employees and other people to actually create content. We've seen a lot of brands reaching out actually on our side because that's what they want to do. They using our rankings, to give some sort of incentive for their employees to actually post because as you know, it's super hard to get started when you're building from scratch.
100%, Jeremy. And it's interesting you touch on getting the employees to post. I think something that we're seeing from a lot of guests and that you've probably picked up on at this point, being someone who's so plugged into this creator marketing LinkedIn space, is that employee-led or employee-generated content, whatever you want to call it, where more than just the co-founder is posting, but you've got multiple people on either the sales team or at the company that are creating content and getting the brand awareness up for the business, seems to be a really powerful way to market and increase your reach in 2026 on LinkedIn and probably other platforms as well. But it still feels like there's a lot of challenges around actually implementing that, whether it be things like, you mentioned, how do you incentivize your employees to actually do it consistently? How do you maintain a consistency of branding and still give them the freedom to post what they feel is authentic? It feels like there's a lot of challenges there.
I think the honestly the easiest way is to not force them and to have them do it naturally. It's I understand that it's your own LinkedIn profile. It's your personal space, and by definition, working for a company, is short term. No one's gonna stay in the same company for 20 to 30 years. So that explains why so many people are reluctant to do it. So that I understand, and that's the reason why we're trying to push for more, natural content, as in, just post about yourself and, not telling them post about Favikon, post about our company, make it more about yourself because indirectly it's still good, it's still going to drive some kind of visibility. And I always say that, when we hire someone, the idea is to grow your personal branding because, in the long term, it's going to be good for you. 100%. If you live in 1 year and you've built, I don't know, like 10K followers on LinkedIn, that's awesome. It's like your CV on steroids when you're left. But it's gonna be good for us because indirectly it's gonna drive visibility to Favicon. So the idea is to find a balance. And I think most companies were what they're doing wrong is that they're really trying to push their employees like there's some kind of like make them post about the company, and of course that's not gonna work. And of course most employees are gonna be reluctant to do so. So I think there is a perfect balance to be found, which is not easy, but that's how you're gonna get your employees to create content. And obviously, like I said before, we have an internal ranking because we're Favicon. So obviously we have a ranking for this, and every week we compare who's the number one, who's done the most engagement, etc. And that's make it a bit gamified is always a good way, I think.
How have you thought about making content on the company page? Because Favikon has over 100,000 followers on your company page, way more than you personally. And I'm sure, I mean, probably almost even like the whole company combined. So, how have you thought about balancing the company page and your personal page, Jeremy, at the same time?
Well, I think a company page is great for credibility. It should not be, it should not replace any personal content. Personal pages, they're, by definition, they're for personal storytelling about you. A company page is great, to give some insights about product updates, behind the scene content. People love to see what's going on behind the scene. So we try to do it at least once a week. We try to share, the deeper stuff also on the Favikon page. But I think we're trying to also not take it too seriously, like most companies do on LinkedIn. They think like, okay, it's a company page, so it needs to be like boring in a way. And I think the reason we've been successful on LinkedIn is we haven't taken that route. We've always tried to use the page to be insightful, but also, to do things that are different and not boring. So fun, witty, insightful, etc. But obviously having these rankings also help a lot because, many people they follow us for that because, people are obsessed with rankings, like trust me.
I think you've also hit on one really cool thing, Jeremy, which is that content creators are always looking for more good content. Whether we admit it or not, we're always looking for something to post about. And even with AI, there is just a shortage of good ideas. And when you have your ranking on Favicon, Matt and I see them all the time on our feeds. It's an easy thing we can all post, and you just lower the barrier of entry for people to post. And I think that's just it was a genius marketing strategy for you guys, and I'm sure it continues to just print users.
Yeah, you put it the right way. I think it's an easy post. It's an easy win as a creator because it's about feeling good, saying I made some progress. I'm number I don't know 3, whatever. It's funny because sometimes we see people bragging about being top 3 or top 5 in a ranking, and then when you look at the ranking and there's like 3 people in the ranking, so you're essentially top 3 in your niche, but there's like 3 people in it, and so it's really funny. But it's hard to be a content creators, so it's good, sometimes to, feel good about your progress. That's why creators love to share them because, especially LinkedIn, it's tough, as a creator. You don't get monetization. The algorithm can be super problematic. Sometimes you do 0 views and you spend hours on a post. So yeah, those rankings are kind of like a breath of fresh air. But we've always tried to make them as shareable as possible. And I think something that's helped us tremendously since like a few months ago is that we released this pyramid. You don't just share your profile, you share the top 10 of your niche. And that's been a game changer for us because before that, many creators, they're a bit shy to just publish this big picture of themselves saying I'm number 3, whatever. And now they can share their rankings, but in a very subtle way, saying, hey, I'm so happy about, all the people in my niche who are number 10. And oh, by the way, I'm number 8 in this niche. It's more subtle. And so it's easier to share. And that's made our ranking shares even more powerful in the past few months. So yeah, we keep pushing on this. The only kind of like first world issue we have with those rankings, like you said, are like kind of like all over the feed, is that many people have no idea that we actually have a software behind. So we trying, to balance more our communication so that people know that we're more than just rankings, even though it's kind of like our bread and butter. That's kind of like the challenge for us for 2026 is to show that sure rankings are cool, but that's not what we are like 100%.
Jeremy, let's transition more to LinkedIn focus specifically because you have a pretty unique data set, both of what creators' analytics are, what creators are doing well in these niches, who's getting money for what brand deal. So I'm curious to give the audience some takeaways on what's working well on LinkedIn right now, any trends you're seeing, and stuff that's working for your personal brand. So take it away, and we just love to learn from you here.
We're in a transition phase in the creator economy where it's so easy to create content these days, to create trash content, that we're really entering the phase of the knowledge creators, where you will have success as a creator if you actually share insightful stuff that only you can post about, essentially. Because again, I can open ChatGPT, Claude, or whatever, and I can ask to make an insightful post on any subject. So that's anyone can do it now. And that means that the barriers to entry to become a creator are virtually close to zero. So that's why I really think now good creators, they will find, like you said before, they will niche down as much as possible, and they will find the expertise, the personal expertise that are, only them can do, with their own storytelling, their own expertise, their own niche. And that's actually literally what LinkedIn is doing these days. They're heavily rewarding experts. I know, Daniel, you read my post about the top voice purge. There is clear pattern with the people who lost their badge. I've been studying it for the past 2 weeks. But it's people who had like generic expertise, like an expertise that it's kind of like easy to get. So, for instance, personal branding, right? Personal branding expertise, like if you're a personal brand expert, honestly, it doesn't take a PhD to be an expert. It's something that can be easily replicated with AI. When you're looking for tips, to grow your personal branding, it's easy, right? So on LinkedIn side, they won't see it as a expertise. Those who keep their top voice badges are going to be the ones who have like a career, a real expertise in their field. It can be very technical. It can be because of your career over the last 20 years, where you've built legitimacy, expertise. So it's more like on the storytelling side, you've built something that's unique. And yeah, that's really this word unique that I feel like is going to be more important than ever in the next few years. And yeah, the top voice purge, I think, is a very great indication on where the creator economy is going, where it's going to be much more about expertise and uniqueness and personal storytelling than anything else. So yeah, if I was a creator, I would really focus on myself, who I am, what value can I bring as a creator, and I really, really, really would try to stay away from industries that are very prone to AI slop. And that's also another takeaway from the LinkedIn top voice purge, is that industries which are very prone to AI slop content, like I said before, marketing, HR, etc. This is where like the purge happened the most. It's insane.
Jeremy, the point that you made about posting something that is uniquely based on your experience or your background, there's a lot of people I think who may be watching thinking to themselves, I don't have anything special to say, or my perspective is not differentiated. What do you say to those people?
Well, I obviously disagree. I do think that we all have something unique and special to tell. Each life is unique. Each career is unique. As you tell about yourself and your wins, your screw ups, etc. That's how you're gonna get takeaways, interesting takeaways that only you can tell, and that's how you build an expertise depending on which field you are. Everyone has something interesting to say. Even my 12-year-old nephew would have interesting things to say. And that's really like where people get it wrong. They think that it's about learning stuff. It's about saying something that would sound like true expertise, but in the end, it's much more about yourself first, and then that's how you get takeaways.
Makes a ton of sense, and I think you articulated it well, Jeremy. When it comes to writing your own LinkedIn posts, what is the process that you follow? And how much time are you actually spending on writing and posting?
Honestly, 20 minutes max every day. It's like going to the gym. At first, it's really tough. It takes motivation, it takes time, but when it actually turns into a habit, it gets way easier. Sometimes, like on my motorbike or in a shower, I had this random thought, and I just literally write it down like a few words in a draft. And yeah, like every week I have like 10, 15 ideas I know I'm gonna post about. But there's also like, I would say every 2 or 3 days, I would post about something because, I just had this idea and I think it's more fresh or whatever. So I'm a very, very flexible agenda. So for instance, if I see a post yesterday, I saw a post from Joel Lalgui, HR influencer, who got his account restricted because he was posting too much. And yeah, I was like, oh, you know what? Super interesting. I need to post about this. Yeah, I just posted about this and that wasn't planned. And then that means that the post from yesterday is just going to go down in my list. But essentially, I have many ideas all the time and they come by themselves now because I'm so used to it.
Once you have that idea, are you going directly to your laptop and writing it, or do you have like a banked up notes app in your phone and then when it comes time to write, you're writing and then just posting?
I'm literally using my phone. I use the Apple app, for notes and I put a few words and that's it. And then when it comes to writing it, I write the first draft, like literally, like in a very fast manner. It takes like 3 minutes. Everything that comes to my mind, I write it. And then obviously I use AI, to reformulate it to make it, like more structured. And yeah, the whole process takes me 20 minutes, literally. Of course, AI didn't make the post. I made the post. I did my thoughts, I did the sentence, etc. But then AI makes it super easy to make sure it's well formatted, well structured, and that's the reason why, like 3 years ago, honestly, would have taken me like twice as much time. And I do think that AI is a really great instrument now to create content. If it comes after create content and not before.
Your process that you described is pretty much the same as every single other guest you've had, where they have an idea, whether it's in the shower, on a walk, they write it down in the notes app or in a Notion, Google Docs, whatever it is. And then when it comes times to write, they'll write it, they'll refine it, probably using ChatGPT or Claude, maybe look at it with a fresh pair of eyes and then post it. It's
Yeah, because like I have my marketing manager, and he's been trying to post more, and he's trying super high. It's because he starts the day, and he's like, okay, what should I post about today? Of course, it's super tough. Like if you start, with a blank page, it's impossible. So that's the reason why creating content is it's a long term process. It doesn't work that way. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to create content and that's it. It's about long term mission again.
You've been creating on LinkedIn for a long time. Speaking of long term, what attracts you to LinkedIn versus other platforms? Because you've got data on Instagram, LinkedIn. I mean, all the platforms. So I'm curious what attracts you specifically to LinkedIn when you need creators and businesses.
Well, I'll be 100% honest with you. LinkedIn is not my favorite platform on a personal level. I actually spend the most time on X, on Twitter, because I do think that even though the platform hasn't like used to be much better, it's still super useful when it comes to like fresh news, especially in the industry, the marketing industry, in the startup industry. I feel like there's you learn way much, and there's also this polished thing about LinkedIn that makes it less attractive to consume as a user. I'm not saying LinkedIn is bad. I'm just saying I don't spend that much time on LinkedIn other than for work. My favorite platforms, I do think X is very interesting to actually learn stuff. TikTok, I used to create content. It's fun. I do consume a lot of content on TikTok as well, but on a business level, it's not that useful. Instagram, Instagram, they banned my account, so ask them why they don't like us. But it's because Meta, they're not a big fan of companies getting our data. Yeah, I think when you complement LinkedIn, Twitter, and ideally Instagram, I do feel like for a content creator these days, this is like the best trio you can have if you're serious about content creation. Because on Instagram, you're gonna have kind of like the public approach. Everybody will be able to see your post. It's kind of like democratized. You can make videos as well. Then you have LinkedIn on the professional side, and then you have TikTok, where I do think that there's a lot of things that you can consume, at least as an entrepreneur.
Jeremy, as someone who's used LinkedIn for quite a long time, is there anything that you wish they would change about the platform today?
100%. I do wish they were way more transparent about everything, because there's like no communication whatsoever. Like, I think the Top Voice thing was a good example. I mean, I talked to a bunch of Top Voice creators, didn't get any email, nothing. Same for the creator programs. It's a black box. LinkedIn is a huge company, so the departments, they don't even talk to one another. Sometimes it feels like. So yeah, way more transparency. I wish they were a bit more serious about the creator program, because like, again, when I'm seeing what's going on Twitter, it's crazy. Like, they have this super robust monetization program. They have a creator team that's super active and actively, engaging with their community. I've heard that for 2026, it's a bit confidential, but still, I can share that they're planning a few things, to make it easier for creators to get brand deals, especially. So it's just that when you're LinkedIn, you make so much money out of Sales Navigator and the whole sales use cases you can think of, that yeah, creators, they're just not a priority, in my opinion. So I think they're trying to balance their resources to make sure that what they do is actually useful in the long term, and makes them money. And I do think that creators can bring LinkedIn a lot of money through brand partnerships, and maybe I think that's what they're trying to understand. But yeah, lack of communication is the big weakness of LinkedIn right now, in my opinion.
What do you think about paid boosting on LinkedIn? I'm sure you've seen they've been pushing this where every time you post, now there's a big button that says, hey, do you want more of your audience to see it?
I mean, it's fair, right? As long as it doesn't replace organic reach, I don't see a problem there, honestly. People have been complaining because they are saying that it essentially replaces, organic posts. I don't think so. My personal opinion, it's a hot take, is that there's no such thing as, shadow banning. I think it's a myth. I mean, it can happen on very specific use cases, but, if you lose reach, it's just because there are more people creating content, prioritizing, other types of creators. Because I'm pretty sure from what I'm seeing on my side that, for instance, right now, if you have a lot of followers, like more than 100K, it's clearly more difficult for you to get rich as it was 1 year or 2 years ago. The reason being that LinkedIn is trying to, give more visibility to small creators. But obviously, those creators, those bigger creators, are not going to happy about it, so they complain. You see, it's a different balance to find. But people seem to forget that, I don't know, there's like twice or three times more creators now on LinkedIn than a few years ago. So obviously, it's not as easy to get rich. I remember 2 years ago, I would post about anything, I would get tens of thousands of rich easily, but it's because there was virtually no competition. So I don't think it's a big issue, to be honest.
We've heard similar sentiments from other guests with very large followings who have noticed that their impressions are down, or it's just more difficult nowadays to have the same amount of reach as they did even just a few years ago.
On top of that, I think it's because also those people with large following are usually people in the personal branding space, HR space, etc., which are the very same industries, that are like prone to AI slop. Falling back on the point I made with the top voice before, I think it's the same story. I don't think LinkedIn wants to push this kind of content that much anymore. They're looking for more expertise kind of content, and those niche creators have usually, way less followers, and that may explain also why, bigger influencers are losing that much in terms of reach.
Yeah, it's interesting you say they're prioritizing smaller followers or creators because it reminds me of a conversation I had with Jason Pfeiffer, the editor in chief of Entrepreneur magazine, a while back. And he was telling me that through his conversations with folks at LinkedIn, they had mentioned the priority was to enable anyone, whether it be someone with 20,000 or just 1,000 followers, if they're an executive, to come on the platform and to be able to extract some sort of economic value from posting or reaching out to someone. And it feels like part of that is giving smaller voices, smaller creators, the chance to also get the reach that a creator with 100,000 followers would also get.
Yeah, because people seem to forget about it. They forget about the past. But a few years ago, LinkedIn was literally an oligarchy. You had like a bunch of big influencers, like Justin Welsh and the likes, and they would get all the impressions or the visibility. They would be all over the feeds, and yeah, that's it. And it was way less interesting. Obviously, those people with a large following, they're not getting as much, but it's because they were like dominating the platform before, and now that LinkedIn is so much democratized, like you said, it would make sense that even as a small creator, you can get a lot of visibility real fast. And I do think that another platform that's making it well, sort of, is Twitter, where you can get viral even, it's just a few thousand followers. You can get millions of impressions if you do something viral, etc. I don't think LinkedIn is quite there yet, but we're starting to see creators with only a very, very few followers that are getting viral on LinkedIn, and I think that's a very good sign, honestly. We want a fresh platform, right? We don't want always the same faces.
100%. It's fascinating the differences between X and LinkedIn, and the point you said about how on X, very small creators can still go viral and get a lot of reach is really interesting to me because what I've also noticed is typically people will say, okay, it's a lot harder to grow on X compared to
Yeah,
LinkedIn.
that's true.
And I'm not an X power user, Jeremy. You probably know better than me why that may be the case, but it's also interesting that smaller creators on X can go really viral as well. So it's not like it's not possible to grow there, but maybe they are also focused on the expertise driven content.
It's the exact opposite. You can get easily viral on Twitter, but it's super hard to grow an audience and to grow followers, because people on X, they're looking for content above all, whereas on LinkedIn, they're trying to build, network. So that's why on LinkedIn it's easier, to grow an audience because you're trying to build something, real relationships and whatever. But it's harder to get viral. So yeah, again, I'm not defending X or its aspect because I do think that it's super hard to grow. As a creator on X, you need to be super active. You need to do like some kind of growth hacks all the time. But if you just want to get viral, you have a startup, you want to get viral. I mean, I've seen this company, this SaaS, they just got like 600K views on a video for their launch a few weeks ago, and they were like virtually non-existent on X. So I think that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Daniel, do you have any other questions? Otherwise, we can probably shift into good idea, bad idea.
Let's do it. So, Jeremy, we have a recurring segment here where I'm going to throw some ideas at you, and you're going to tell me if they're a good idea or a bad idea and why. Ideally, provide some rationale as well. And the first one is building a company in France. Is that a good idea or a bad idea?
Honestly, a good idea. Good idea. I think France is pretty underrated because sure, taxes are expensive as hell, etc. but you have a pool of talent that's insane. You can hire an engineer in Paris for 50K, even a good engineer, a junior engineer. In the US, it's going to be 150K. You have plenty of, helps still from the government, when you're a startup, and we have the best food and the best culture. So good idea.
What about cross-posting the same thing across LinkedIn and X, like turning a LinkedIn post into a thread? Is that a good idea or a bad idea?
It's a good idea, but it's hard because you can't just copy paste. You need to adapt, and most of the content you do on LinkedIn is not going to work on X. So it is a good idea, but it takes efforts to do it properly.
When you say that the content on LinkedIn isn't going to perform the same on X, can you elaborate on that?
LinkedIn is very polished in its approach, the way you're presenting things, etc. Whereas on X, it genuinely favors random thoughts, things that are like, not polished. So the complete opposites. I do think that again, you can do clever and thoughtful stuff on X, but it's just that X threads are not that easy. There's a certain way you need to structure them, which makes it really hard and counterintuitive to LinkedIn, where you did these big posts or you did these carousels. It's a different exercise. Honestly, it's harder than it looks from the outside. I do think X is a hard platform when it comes to creating content, and people underestimate it. But yeah, but it's still a good idea. Obviously, the more platforms, the better.
What about posting 3 times per day on LinkedIn and generally posting times, like posting at 9 a.m. Eastern time?
Bad idea. It's more about quality than quantity these days because, like I said, it's so easy to create content anyways. So you're gonna saturate your audience. I do think that the time where you post is kind of like overrated. I think it's more important to just be active when you post than anything else. And actually, there's something also people have been criticizing a lot on LinkedIn lately. I actually think it's great, is that now you can post, have literally zero reach, zero impression, but after a few days, it will kind of be revived, even after a few weeks, which I think is great because in the past, if your post was dead, it was dead forever. And now LinkedIn gives you a chance, to revive it. So no, I think once a day is clearly the best spot, and more than that is clearly overkill, honestly.
Do you have data on that? Because I'm a huge volume creator and have fallen in love with it and am having trouble parting ways with it.
How much do you post? 3 times a day?
3 times a day during the week and twice a day on the weekends.
Jesus Christ. I can check for you if you want, actually. That could be an interesting thing. It's really rare. I mean, I'm guessing 99% of people don't post more than once a day, but I will check the people like yourself, the freaks, who are, to see like if there's a difference. It's actually a good question.
I will say most of my impressions, I don't know the exact number. I've got to do this one day, but Matt and I have talked about this a lot, where the power rule definitely applies, where 10 to 20% of my posts are getting a majority of my views. And once I find a format that works, I'll just rinse and repeat it. But sometimes it takes me like posting 3 times a day for a month to figure out a format that I can rinse and repeat. And then as I'm rinsing and repeating that format, I'm trying another format and trying to improve the format and everything.
Yeah, I mean, in the very, very beginning, where as you get started, it could actually be the exception where posting numerous times a day could be a good idea because it's true that you need to understand what you want to post about, how your audience reacts. So maybe in the very beginning, why not?
Matt, do you have any good idea or bad ideas?
Yeah. What do you think about posting video on LinkedIn?
Bad idea right now because clearly the algorithm doesn't care about videos right now. It's very clear with the numbers. If it actually takes your resources and time just because you want to do videos, yeah, it's a bad idea. Videos are always a great idea if you want to repurpose them, do on YouTube, on whatever. If it takes you, tons of time, I would not go for it at this stage. I think LinkedIn ran some tests last year with the video format. It was clearly a cheat code at the time to do videos. And I think they've realized that people are not here for the videos. And yeah, right now, clearly the algorithm doesn't favor them.
Jeremy, another question for you. If you're a founder building a company, what do you think about posting about your failures and generally just more vulnerable, authentic content?
It's the best. Nothing screams authentic more than, admitting you screwed up, being an open book. It's actually the hardest content to make. It's even myself, it's hard because it's so counter-natural, to post about your failures, etc. Especially in Europe, I think there's a big gap, cultural gap between the US and Europe, where in Europe it's very, very bad to talk about your failures. Whereas in the US, you kind of like you're proud, of failing. Or like when I remember when I was in New York, people would be like, "Oh yeah, I failed those 2, 3 companies. That's awesome." And then I've learned so much through these failures. Now I can actually be super successful. And in France, no one would actually be proud of that. And I think that's one of the reasons also why the American culture is so great at entrepreneurship, because you learn by failing. And building public creators are the ones who perform the most, 100%, because people trust them. Because when things are going wrong, they tell about it. They're not trying to hide anything. So that's super powerful, and that's the kind of content that people want to see. They don't want to see the polished and perfect life content that have kind of like dominated our feeds in the past few years. Now they want real stuff. So yeah, definitely a great thing to do is admitting their failure, 100%.
Yeah, I think there's a really great lesson in there because I've worked with a fair number of founders looking to grow on LinkedIn just via my LinkedIn ghostwriting agency. And one of the common mental blockers that comes up, say, we're working with someone running a software company, for example, is like I'm selling B2B. So I don't even think that some 50-year-old executive at another company is going to want to see me posting about my failures or anything around like my personal like story. And oftentimes what I told them is, look, it sounds counterintuitive, but you're actually building more trust by showing them that you're a human being. But I'm curious from your perspective, if you've heard that objection from people who don't really want to post that content, and it is hard, as both of us know, what would you say to them?
I really don't understand this argument, because if our feed was full of people just sharing their updates about their products or careers, it would be boring as hell. And people are voyeurs, they just want to, see what's going on with your life. They want storytelling. And yeah, that's 100 times more powerful than just, sharing your updates, your successes, etc. And like you said, not only it builds trust, but also I do think it's good in the long term, because obviously it's not about just sharing your failures. It's just, one part of, your overall strategy. And, when it comes to the time where you actually gonna want to share your updates or your success, people will be like, wow, he deserves it. Yeah, I know him. I remember this post about, when he got divorced or whatever. And yeah, people are, more naturally inclined to feel sympathy with someone when they feel they actually know the person. And it's very unconscious, but it's the same when you're selling stuff. If people feel like they know you, you're gonna convert way easier. Whereas, if just like you don't know the person, you don't know who they are, whatever, zero context about them, it's gonna be much, much, much harder to have people interested in your product. And that I'm 100% convinced of. And people buy personalities more than products. They buy products if they know the people behind. And that's also the reason, with Favikon, where we're trying to build this brand, is that people know who's behind, they know the story, they know the behind the scenes, and that makes us more sympathetic, I think, in general.
And I think that applies to B2C and B2B because at the end of the day, the buyer is still a person.
100%. It's B2C, B2B. There's a reason why people are obsessed with celebrities, influencers, etc. It's just because, they want to follow their life. They love gossips, this kind of stuff. So yeah, it applies to everyone, even your B2B SaaS founder. People are curious. They're just curious. And again, in an AI slop world, it takes even more weight being personal.
Jeremy, before we wrap, is there anything that we haven't talked about today that you want to share with the audience, which is a bunch of founders, operators, marketers, people interested in content creation?
Go for it, 100%. Like you said, like when we're hiring at Favikon, having someone who's actually active in content creation with a robust LinkedIn profile makes a huge difference. Like, I do think that the future also of recruiting will involve a lot of content creation. I do think that in 10 years from now, if you're not active, if you don't post every once in a while on LinkedIn or on other platforms, it's going to be much harder to get a job versus those people who actually put themselves out there, etc. Because people will hire also personalities, and again, content creation shows who you are. And I'm sorry I know I've been repeating these words since the very beginning, but in an AI slop world, it's all about personality. It's all about being unique. It's about showing who you are. And that's why being a content creator is so important these days, because you have your personality, and that's your huge differentiator in every aspect of your life.
Amazing. Thanks for coming on, Jeremy.
Thank you for having me.